The story I'm about to share happened over 3 decades ago, but it's something that still haunts me to this day. It was the summer of 1993, and I was just a kid, around 10 years old if I remember correctly. My family, well, my extended family was massive. Every summer, we'd head to our grandparents' beachfront house, a sprawling mansion that could fit over 30 people. It was the kind of place every kid dreamed of spending their summer. My cousins and I were like a pack of wolves, inseparable. But of all my relatives, I was closest to my Uncle Aaron. He wasn't like the other adults. Aaron was always patient, always there to listen. He had this way of making you feel like you could tell him anything, no matter how small. But looking back, I wish I hadn't. That summer, I started having these dreams, nightmares to be exact. They weren't like normal bad dreams. These were different. They were vivid, detailed, almost real. I'd wake up in cold sweats, convinced that something was wrong. In the dreams, something terrible always happened. My parents dying in accidents, my siblings disappearing into thin air, things no 10-year-old should be imagining. At first, I thought it was just a phase, but when the dreams didn't stop, in fact, when they became more frequent and more terrifying, I decided to tell Uncle Aaron. He was a therapist after all, and I trusted him completely. If anyone could help, it was him. It sounds like there's something deeper going on, something you're not addressing. These nightmares, they're a reflection of your subconscious fears. I didn't understand what he meant. I was 10. Fears? I wasn't scared of anything. But Uncle Aaron was insistent that my nightmares were a result of some repressed frustration I had with my parents. He said it was normal for kids my age to harbor feelings of resentment, even if we didn't realize it. I wasn't convinced, but he was the expert. He told me to try something different, something strange. He said I should start being a little more disobedient, a little less respectful toward my parents. See what happens, he said. So, like any confused kid, I followed his advice. For 3 days, I was a nightmare myself. I talked back to my parents. I refused to help around the house, things that weren't in my nature at all. And the worst part? It didn't work. The nightmares didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. By the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Uncle Aaron again, desperate for an answer. This time, he told me there was one final solution, something he hadn't mentioned before. But before he told me, he asked if I was sure I was ready. His voice was different this time, less comforting, more, I don't know, eager. If it happens again, if the nightmares come back, you'll have to do something. You'll have to let your mind free your body. I didn't understand, but before I could ask more, he stopped me. He said it wasn't something I should worry about, not until the time came. That night, I didn't sleep, or at least I didn't think I did. I remember lying there, listening to the wind outside, staring at the wall. And then, I heard it. A voice, whispering, right next to my ear, Uncle Aaron's voice. It's time. I turned around, and there he was, standing at the foot of my bed, in the dark, watching me. I screamed, and he stepped back, his face expressionless, before quietly slipping out of the room. I ran to my parents' room, hysterical. I told them everything, about the dreams, about Uncle Aaron, and my dad. He didn't waste any time. He stormed into Uncle Aaron's room, ready to confront him. A fight broke out. My dad grabbed Aaron's bag, the one he carried everywhere, and threw it open. Inside were notes, hundreds of them, about me, about my dreams. Articles about inducing nightmares, about manipulating a child's mind. It was sick. Aaron had been experimenting on me the whole time, trying to trigger something dark. The police took him away the next morning. I never saw Uncle Aaron again. I don't know what happened to him after that. My parents never talked about it, and honestly, I never wanted to know. But to this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up that night.
It was a cold autumn night when my friend Jenna invited me to her family's cabin in the woods. We were both looking for a weekend escape from the city, so I quickly agreed. The cabin was rustic, built by her grandfather many years ago. As we drove deeper into the forest, the trees loomed taller and the air grew colder. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving us in darkness as we reached the cabin. When we arrived, Jenna unlocked the door and we stepped inside. It was cozy, filled with old furniture and photographs of her family. The smell of pine filled the air. We settled in and started a fire, laughing and reminiscing about our childhoods. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The wind howled outside, and every creak of the cabin seemed amplified in the silence. After a while, we decided to explore the surroundings. The moon illuminated the path ahead, casting eerie shadows on the ground. As we walked, I noticed a strange marking on a tree, a crude symbol carved into the bark. Jenna shrugged it off, saying it was probably just some kids messing around. But I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. We returned to the cabin, brushed off the feeling, and made popcorn to watch a movie. As we settled on the couch, I suddenly heard a noise outside. It sounded like whispering, low and unintelligible. I glanced at Jenna, who seemed unfazed. "It's probably just the wind," she said dismissively. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there. Halfway through the movie, we heard a loud thud against the side of the cabin. Jenna jumped, and we both stared at each other wide-eyed. "What was that?" I whispered. She suggested checking it out, but my instincts screamed against it. Reluctantly, we grabbed flashlights and headed outside. We shone our lights around the cabin, the beams cutting through the darkness. Nothing seemed out of place, just trees swaying in the wind. But then I saw it again. That same symbol on the tree, only now it seemed more pronounced. I took a step closer, examining it when I heard it again, the whispering clearer this time. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jenna nodded, fear creeping into her eyes. The whispers grew louder, echoing in the stillness. We turned to head back inside, but as we did, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the trees. My heart raced as I squinted to see who it was. It was a woman, pale and dressed in a long white gown, her hair hanging loosely around her face. Jenna tugged on my sleeve, urging me to go back, but I was frozen in place. The woman raised her hand, pointing directly at us. I felt a surge of panic. "We need to leave, now," I shouted, and we sprinted back into the cabin, slamming the door behind us. We locked the door and turned off the lights, huddled together on the couch. The whispers intensified, and I felt as if they were surrounding us. I could hardly breathe, convinced that the woman was outside, waiting for us. We stayed silent, listening for any sign of her presence. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the back of the cabin, making us jump. I grabbed my phone and dialed for help, but there was no signal. Jenna's eyes were wide with fear, and I could see she was just as terrified as I was. We debated calling for help, but with no way to contact anyone, we were trapped. We spent the night huddled together, listening to the whispers and the occasional thud against the walls. As dawn finally broke, the sounds faded, and a heavy silence fell over the cabin. When the sun rose, we cautiously opened the door and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and the forest looked peaceful again. Everything seemed normal, but as we looked around, we found more symbols carved into trees. They surrounded the cabin, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. We quickly packed our things, eager to leave. As we drove away, I glanced back at the cabin one last time, and in that moment, I saw her again. The woman in white, standing among the trees, watching us leave. Thanks for listening to this chilling story. It's unsettling to think that something so ordinary like a cafe visit can turn into a nightmare. Have you ever experienced anything strange in a cafe or similar setting? Share your stories in the comments below. And remember, the next time you find yourself in a quiet spot, keep an eye on your surroundings. You never know what or who might be watching you. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Your support helps us bring more horror content to life. Stay tuned for the next story, and until then, keep your lights on.